What's
So
up?
we are live. We're going to be talking Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko. What a great heavyweight fight that we just witnessed. We had, the old grizzled veteran, a man who had 18 title defenses in his reign over 10 years. He fought a man with just 18 fights, and they did not disappoint in front of 90,000 fans in Wembley Stadium. Tell us your thoughts on the fight, Hector. Um, were you impressed with Anthony Joshua? Were you impressed with Vladimir Klitschko? Did it go the way you thought it would go? Give us your thoughts on the fight.
Yeah, I was really impressed with both guys. I thought they both put on a great performance. I was impressed with a couple of things for Klitschko specifically. I was impressed that he was able to maintain that stamina and kind of maintain his composure after being knocked down, after being out of the ring since November 2015. He didn't use a lot of holding. He didn't use a lot of dirty tactics. He used his jab, his right hand. He really showed why when he retires, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think that there's any shame within his performance. I think that, if anything, his stature may have been elevated by this loss. Even because, during his reign, his performances were here and there. He had a lot of subpar performances or boring performances. But I think this fight in front of 90,000 people, he showcased why he was a heavyweight champion for so long. And on the flip side, for Anthony Joshua, I think that he's pretty much the perfect package for a heavyweight champion. He's big, he's strong, he has all knockouts, he's articulate, he's funny. He's perfect for this era. And I think that, once the United States stops being so stupid and starts covering him and starts giving him the attention that he deserves, he'll be an even bigger star over here, like he's in the United Kingdom. Because he's already done it. He's done promos with things like Kevin Hart and The Rock already, so he's already on his way. He already has endorsements with Under Armour, so he is already on his way. This was just kind of the cherry on the top and kind of solidified him as possibly over anybody else, the leader of this new era.
What are your thoughts on that, Stacks?
I think it was a good fight by Joshua. He underwent perseverance. He was knocked down. He was able to get back up and show what he was made of. And he had a lot more stamina than I thought he was going to have at the end of the fight. I thought Klitschko was going to take over, which he started to after the sixth round. And he was able to just hang in there with Klitschko. And it was Klitschko who fell off at the end, and Joshua was able to attack and hurt Klitschko. Still had that power in the 11th round to put him out, and that surprised me.
Yeah, I was very surprised by that as well. I kept saying leading up to the fight that the deeper the fight went, the more it favored Klitschko. And it certainly looked that way, when Klitschko came back in the sixth round and dropped Joshua. It looked like Joshua was on his way out of there. He looked like he was spent, didn't have anything left. He was definitely hurt by that right hand. But for some reason, Klitschko just couldn't pull the trigger once again. He let him off the hook, in my opinion. And somewhere late in the fight, Joshua caught a second wind, and he looked fresh again. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that's how I saw it. It looked like Klitschko began to fade. Joshua started working the body, and Klitschko, and that's another thing Klitschko never did in the fight. I don't know if he threw one body shot in the whole fight, and that's a huge mistake against a young fighter who's muscular like that. And leading up to the fight, he said that he thought Joshua would fade because of the muscles. He should have gone to the body. So I think he let Joshua off the hook a bit. And you see what happens. This is boxing. When you have your man hurt like that, you have to capitalize, particularly being a 41-year-old veteran, somebody was, like I said, defended his title so many times with all that experience. He should have known, I have my man hurt. I got to get him out of here, even if it means me getting knocked out.
I didn't really see that. I don't think he let him off the hook, really. I think Joshua caught a second wind in the 8th round. So, Klitschko had to be careful because he could get hurt. So I think he was just kind of taking his time, seeing what would happen, and probably waiting for a counter right hand to land. So I don't really think he let him off the hook. Being aggressive is not really his game. So
no, never has been. I know he's safety first and he's very calculated in his attack, but when you're the older man, you're not trying to stick around 12 rounds with a young lion like that. Maybe he underestimated Joshua, just like Joshua kind of looked like he may have underestimated Klitschko after he dropped him in the 5th. It looked like Joshua was spent after that, like he underestimated Klitschko's will to stick around. And maybe Klitschko did the same thing. He just didn't think Joshua was going to be there anymore. He thought maybe he could, be calculated and get Joshua out of there. But I think it was a big mistake. He didn't go to the body, like I said. Joshua started going to the body. I don't know that wore Klitschko down, but it may have given him something to think about, because late in the fight, you started seeing Joshua land punches he wasn't landing earlier in the fight. So I think that it had an effect. He kind of changed up his attack. And like you said, around the 8th, 9th round, he caught a second win. And, that was all she wrote. Stacks, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And, the funny thing is a lot of people don't understand when somebody's that muscular, and that's with both Klitschko and with Joshua. When you have that much muscle, it takes a lot of oxygen to flow through those veins to keep you going. And it was very surprising to see, Joshua regain that second win, especially in the later rounds, especially not having that experience of going past, what was it, 6 rounds or 7 rounds that he's, in his career, never going past the 6th or 7th round. So it was really surprising to see Joshua come back the way he did. Klitschko, he should have attacked. He should have kept his foot on the gas pedal and took him out when he had the chance. After that 6th round, he had him hurt, and I think he could have took advantage of it. And sometimes you do have to, sacrifice, getting knocked out. He played it a little bit too smart, and he allowed Joshua back into the fight. And I think that's what did it for him. And I don't expect to see a rematch between these two. I really don't. I think at 41 years old, there's really no reason to have a rematch between these two. Yes, was it a good fight? It was probably the greatest heavyweight fight I've actually seen. I mean, I'm sure there was some back in the in the days, but I mean, as far back as I can remember, this is probably one of the best heavyweight fights I've seen. But I don't really see a need for a rematch.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think the only thing that's going to happen is Klitschko's going to get older. Joshua's going to get better. So, was it a great fight? Yeah. Probably the best heavyweight fight in the last 15, 20 years, for sure. Definitely largest scale heavyweight fight that we've seen in the last 20, 25 years. Biggest fight in England. It was a great spectacle and a great fight. They both came and they delivered. But I agree with you. A rematch is not really necessary. I'd like to see Anthony Joshua in with the likes of Deontay Wilder, Luis Ortiz, Joseph Parker, people like that. The Tyson Fury thing, I don't know about that. Tyson Fury obviously would be probably a difficult matchup for him because he's awkward, but he's been out of the ring and dealing with mental health issues and things of that nature, and he's not relevant. So I'd kind of rather see him in with someone who's relevant right now. I do think that he would beat Wilder. I don't think Wilder has what it takes to beat a guy like Joshua, but Luis Ortiz is a different story altogether.
I think that Joshua, a fight with Fury would be a big fight in the UK, so he could still do that. And Fury's still technically the lineal heavyweight champion, so they could still do that fight, and it would do big business over there. But I'd rather see him fight Joshua Parker or Deontay Wilder. I think those would be big fights. In the United States, if you're looking at doing a fight in the US and introduce Anthony Joshua, that's a good fight to do over there. And Joseph Parker, you could go ahead and do that anywhere in the world. You could do that in the UK. You could do that in Australia. You could do that in New Zealand. You could kind of with that a little bit because it'll be a big fight internationally. So the good thing about this is that Joshua being from the UK and having such a big market and kind of branding himself now, he's not kind of stuck to the United States like a lot of fighters over here are, where, you know, outside of Las Vegas in their own hometowns, they really don't fight anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I mean, they're building them to be a international superstar, and I think they're moving them along smart. It was a great fight to do it in, you know, with Klitschko. Obviously, Klitschko's 41 and he's coming off a long layoff, but you know what he's accomplished in the sport. Certainly, you know, you have to take that in account, and you have to say that it was an impressive victory by Joshua and the way he did it. You know, the way he came back and he showed heart and grit, and he came back and he won the fight. So kudos to him. I can't wait to see what's next for them. I enjoyed the fight very much. I know you guys did, and the fans out there enjoyed the fight. But let's see what's next. You know, Deontay Wilder says that he'll take that fight, but you know, I think that'll be an easy fight for Joshua.
Well, I think that Joshua showed that, you know, a jab and a right hand can hurt him. Klitschko, you know, if he did one thing right, is that he landed his jab all night on Joshua. So, you know, but Wilder's jab isn't Klitschko's jab at the same time. I mean, you know, you're talking about two different fighters. So, you know, Wilder always has a puncher's chance. So I'll give him that. You know, he's 38 wins, 37 knockouts. I think the hardest fight for Joshua would be likely Luis Ortiz, because of Ortiz's technical ability. But the only thing is, both fighters kind of have stamina issues where they're both, you know, after 7 or 8 rounds, they're not exactly the most active fighters. But, you know, now Joshua, you know, has the experience of going 11 rounds now. So I'm thinking that if he were to fight Ortiz, he'd be looking at probably trying to get him out of there in the first few rounds.
Yeah, but that's dangerous. You fight a guy like Ortiz and you try to get him out of there, he could very well get you out of there, because being that he is a big punching southpaw with boxing skills, if you ask me, Luis Ortiz definitely has the superior boxing skills when you mention Joshua or him. You're right. They both have stamina issues, so that would be something to keep an eye on. But I'm not sure that at this point in Joshua's career, he could deal with a guy like Luis Ortiz. Now, Luis Ortiz is starting to get up there in that 40 range as well. So that's something also you'd have to take into account. But I don't think that he would come in there and be gun shy like a Klitschko. And I can tell you this with great certainty, that if he would have knocked Joshua down, the fight would have been over. There would have been no hesitation. Luis Ortiz also goes to the body. So we'll see. I doubt that fight happens. You know, a lot of guys don't fight Ortiz, and you know, some of that is to blame on Ortiz and his management team, because you can't really say everyone's ducking him like, you know, the media would make you think. But you know, he needs to get it together with what he's gonna do. You know, he was with Golden Boy and then Eddie Hearn and now Al Heyman. You know, he just needs to settle down, get fights, and make it happen. So we'll see. We'll see.
I don't see Ortiz fighting Joshua anytime soon. I don't see him fighting Wilder anytime soon. Now he's with Heyman. You know, I see maybe fights against Gerald Washingtons, the Brazils, the Mir Mansours. I see Joshua taking a few voluntary defenses. And what this crowd showed tonight is that Anthony Joshua doesn't need the American market.
Correct.
You know, he can fight who he wants in the UK and draw 80,000 to his fight. And Eddie Hearn stacks those cards. He puts 10 to 12 fights on there. He had Katie Taylor on there. He had Lee Salby, I believe, was on that card as well. You know, so he doesn't need the American market. You know, and that's what's gonna That's what's going to make it tough for some of these fighters that want to get in there with Joshua. I can see him fighting, maybe Parker for big money, and Wilder, but Wilder's going to end up having to go across the pond.
Absolutely.
If that fight ever comes to fruition and it really does happen, it's going to end up going to purse bid, and Al Heyman will lose that purse bid because the money is in the UK. It started in 2012 with their Olympic team, and Eddie Hearn has just grown off that. Those London Olympics really put the UK on the map, and they haven't looked back since then.
Absolutely. And I mean, you just had 90,000 fans pack Wembley Stadium. So Wilder really wouldn't have a leg to stand on. If he wants that fight, he's going to have to go to the UK. Aside from that, now you have a unified champion there. So you're right. Eddie Hearn's doing a fantastic job with the way that he's directing Anthony Joshua, and we'll see. I think Joshua beats Wilder easily, but the Joseph Parker fight, Luis Ortiz, those are fights I'd love to see. I think you're right. I think Joseph Parker would get that fight first. Not sure about the Tyson Fury, but Hector makes a great point in saying that it'd be big for the UK, and he does have a belt as well. So we'll see. We'll see. I'd like to know what the fans think in terms of these fights. Who would you like to see Anthony Joshua fight? And next weekend, we have another big fight, Canelo Chavez. And I'm sure this fight has really, really revved people up because now people are excited. This was it wasn't a ho-hum heavyweight fight. It was exciting. So I'm sure people are excited for next week, Canelo Chavez. Hector, just wanted to get your thoughts on that fight just a little bit, and also your fight, Stacks, and we'll cut it there.
My thoughts on Canelo Chavez.
Yes.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about that fight. I want to stand by what I'm saying. Maybe on May 7th, I'll eat some crow, but I don't believe the hype, man. I just don't. Chavez Jr. can hire Nacho Beristain. He can be motivated for the first time in his career. It doesn't matter to me. I think Canelo is a better fighter than him. He goes to the body better. He throws better combinations. He has a better jab. He does everything better than Chavez. And to me, Chavez is kind of late to the game. He's now saying that he's motivated. And for me, it's a little bit too late. So, and honestly, I don't want to hear it. So I'm expecting Canelo to put on a one-sided beating on him, similar to Alfredo Angulo, similar to James Kirkland, similar to Liam Smith. He's going to land uppercuts. He's going to land hooks. He's going to beat up Chavez Jr. And I think that Chavez Jr.'s only chance is in the first 6 rounds to back up Chavez and land some hard punches and hurt him. And Canelo can be hurt, He hasn't been hurt lately, but, people will go back. The Cotto fight back in 2010. And he's been backed up before, even by Liam Smith, even by Alfredo Angulo. So, Chavez does have a chance, but I just think that, at the end of the day, I think Canelo is really going to put a beating on him. And I'm expecting like a late round corner stoppage where I think that I don't think he might drop him a couple of times, but I don't think that he'll knock him out. I think the corner will stop the fight.
Stacks.
I think I think Chavez has a chance, and I tell you why. He's gonna hydrate to probably about 190 damn pounds come fight night. He's gonna be the bigger guy in there. His only 2 losses are to Fonfara and to Martinez. He hurt Martinez late in the fight. I think if he can get in there and he can smother Canelo's shots and turn it into a dirty fight, and get inside and bang with Canelo, and a lot of clinching going on, and maybe he can catch Canelo, but I don't know. It's going to be tough. I think him losing a lot of this weight is going to hurt him. If Canelo can get to that body, Chavez is going to be hurting in those later rounds. and it's gonna be tough for tough for Chavez to try to get in there with them. One thing is Canelo has flat feet. He's flat-footed. He doesn't have a lot of good footwork, so that's to Chavez's advantage. But then again, we can see the complete opposite. We can see maybe Chavez pull a Jacobs out and just stand back and try to counter Canelo. Maybe not go in for the fight and use his reach and jab and try to outbox Canelo. I don't know what type of Chavez to expect, honestly.
And that's the thing about him. He's like a wild card. You never know what to expect. You never know if he's going to come in shape. You never know what Chavez Jr. you're going to get. So interesting points by both of you. And I'm just going to go ahead and ask, because a lot of people ask this question. The winner of this fight, do you think that they're going to go and fight Triple G?
Yeah, I think if it's Canelo, he'll go ahead and fight Triple G in September, especially if the fight goes how I think it's going to go. I think he will fight him. I think there's enough public pressure. And I think that, De La Hoya kind of put out there that, Golovkin fighting in June would be a problem for them with promoting the fight. That's no longer the case. So, I think that the fight could happen. It's very likely to in September. If it doesn't, then, we got the Lemieux fight. I think that if Chavez wins, however, then I think what's going to happen is a rematch with Canelo. I don't think that they'll go directly to a Triple G fight. So either way, though, I think that, May 6th, though, I think regardless of, it being, if it goes one-sided one way, which I think it will, it'll still be an exciting. I don't think it'll be a boring fight at all. But I'll say this, though, because Stacks brought up Martinez and Andres Fonfara. Hey, man, Chavez lost to Brian Vera. He lost to Brian Vera that first fight. I know that. I remember that fight, and I don't think Chavez Jr. won that fight either. So Chavez Jr., to me, I'm gonna say this again. He's the epitome of like the spoiled brat. Man, he hasn't come up the hard way. He hasn't done things easy. Things have been handed to him. When he first got his title, it's because they stripped Sergio Martinez because HBO wouldn't pay for Sebastian Zibic. So he got Zibic, and you know what? That was a close fight too. So Chavez being the bigger guy, could either see an Andy Lee kind of performance, or we could get something else where, like Sergio, he was bigger than Sergio, but it didn't really matter until the 12th round. So, but yes, I do think that.
We got a little bit of the fired up Hector right there, the Hector A. Smith. He started to get fired up.
I'm just saying, man, Chavez is. I mean, look, he's dodged drug tests. He's been DUIs during training camp. He didn't show up for training camp versus Martinez, and now 5 years later, he hit the lottery, and all of a sudden, okay, now I'm ready. Okay, well, I don't believe you. I don't believe him. So he's gonna have to show me to make me a believer. So we'll find out May 6th.
Canelo lost to Lara.
Okay, but that's Lara. That's an Olympic boxer. So there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that.
None at all. What are your thoughts, Stacks? You think the winner fights Triple G or what?
No. No, I don't.
Neither one? Neither man?
No. Here's the thing, man. I mean, it all depends on how this fight plays out.
Yeah, that's true.
If it's a split decision, if it's a close unanimous decision, we're gonna see a rematch, and it's probably gonna be in Azteca Stadium in Mexico City with 150,000 crazy Mexicans. It's a business. It's a business, man. And honestly, that's where I can see it. Going to Mexico City in September, but who knows? If it's a knockout, and Canelo just walks through Chavez, then yeah, we might see it. But honestly, I think something's in play with Lemieux. From what the way Oscar's bringing Lemieux around, having him fight again on this card, I think he's getting the fans ready for a Lemieux Canelo match before we see the Triple G match.
Believe it or not,
they're just gonna let it marinate a little,
I think the Lemieux fight is a more dangerous fight for Canelo personally.
More dangerous than what?
Than Triple G.
Okay, you on that island by yourself? But okay. What do you mean more dangerous? Like he get knocked out? He's more likely to get knocked out? Is that what you mean? Hello?
Yo, he just hung up on you, Hector. He's like,
I think his stuff froze up on us, man.
he's like, I'm not trying to hear Hector right now.
He wasn't trying to hear me. No, he wasn't. But that's okay. We'll keep it going until he comes back on. I mean, I think that Lemieux is a good fight, you know, for Canelo, but and he does have a good chance. I don't know if he's more dangerous than Golovkin, but
Well, I just say
it is a good fight.
I just say that because he's younger, number one. He's got momentum going. I think he learned a lot from the Triple G loss. Because if you've watched Lemieux since that fight, you see the Lemieux that you saw before, but even better. I think he went in there with the wrong game plan. He only had one plan. He thought he was just going to bang it out and let the best man win. And, you know, you can't do that against a guy who has amateur pedigree like Triple G, and, you know, a guy who is not just a puncher. He can box, you know, and people forget that. They think he's just this monster, and he can box. So I think Lemieux, being that he's younger than Triple G's kind of looked a little subpar. I mean, still impressive, but not as impressive. And as of late, and Lemieux is on the rise. And Lemieux, when he knocks guys out, he knocks them out. There's no count to 10. They don't even count. I've said it before. Lemieux is the sharpest punching middleweight that is in the game right now. And, you know, you can say what you want, but just watch what he's doing. He's crushing dudes, you know.
You know, I want to bring something up that Stacks brought up about Mexico City and
Sure.
Azteca Stadium. That's a great idea, actually, because if you go back to, I wrote about it in an article today about boxing's highest attended fights, which you can check out at frontproofmedia.com. You know, Julio Cesar Chavez fought Greg Haugen in 1993, and they got 132,274 people to fill up the stadium. Now, obviously, you know, when you're working on that kind of fight, you know, you're kind of looking at putting up the attendance more so than the actual live gate. So I don't know that the difference between that and Cowboy Stadium and what you can get for Vegas, you might be able to charge more per seat in Vegas and make more money that way. But I think that whether it be Canelo Chavez or Canelo Triple G, if they were to do that, you know, that's another way to show that boxing is, you know, far from being dead. You know, with all of the detractors on ESPN, you know, kind of claiming his death, you know, we could kind of be a good pairing with the Joshua Klitschko fight if we have, you know, a Canelo fight at Aztec Stadium later this year with like over 100,000 people. I think that'd be a good look for the sport. And, you know, for as many Mexican fighters that we have fighting in the United States, you know, we don't, you know, those guys don't have those big fights in Mexico. You know, I think it's about time that, you know, we had a big fight in Mexico and kind of give back to the fans over there who supported so many of the fighters from there. But, you know, they always go to fight in Vegas or Texas or California.
I agree with that. That'd be great. That'd be very, very nice for the sport. Definitely.
Yeah. It'd be a good little, you know.
That's a way for Trump. That's a way for Trump to get us all over there, bro. I ain't going to that fight, man.
That's a good point. It's a trick move.
Wow,
it's a trick move.
Yeah, he get 150,000 of us to go to Mexico City. We ain't never coming back, man.
Wow,
right. That's a trick move.
Frontproof Mexico City right here.
Damn, Stacks.
No, don't forget you do have Chavez versus Alvarez tonight.
On
BN TV. It's the rematch between Canelo's little brother Ramon and Omar Chavez. So those guys are going to go at it. And then you got boxing tonight on Fox Sports 1 from Sam's Town in Las Vegas. You got a couple undefeated fighters going at it tonight. I can't think of who it is right off the top of my head, but you do got boxing tonight on Fox Sports 1 as well. So,
hey, Stacks, is Ramon the one who fought Antonio Margarito recently?
Yeah, he's the one that lost to Margarito.
Okay. I thought it might have been Ramon, but I think that how many brothers does Canelo have fighting? Does he have a couple, or is it just him?
No, it's just
Ramon.
Ramon. And what Margarito did there
Okay.
is he completely wiped out all the plans. See, because what was going to go down is if he would have beat Margarito, then next week, little Ramon would have been fighting for the vacant title. The Canelo vacated at 54. And I'm sure they would have had something going on where both of the brothers were on the card, but with him losing to Margarito, that kind of threw a wrench in the plans.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I mean, do you know if Margarito's going to be fighting again anytime soon? Is he still kind of doing a comeback at all? What's going on with that?
He's gonna fight in Mexico. He
Okay.
won't get licensed here. His eye is gone, man.
Yeah.
He's gonna end up like Israel Vasquez, and that's sad because
yeah,
I'm thinking this summer Vasquez is gonna they're gonna take out his eye. He is gonna lose his eye, and the WBC is gonna pay for that surgery. So, you know, it's a sad situation, but you got to know when to hang him up. You know.
Yeah, man. I would think that he was in enough big fights. I mean, especially considering after what happened in 2009. He still got a Pacquiao fight and a Cotto fight afterwards. So I would think the dude would have saved his money, but I mean, I don't know why he's making the comeback. It just seems like it may be because he needs the money, but even with everything that happened, I don't want to see these dudes coming back and getting beat up.
Yeah, nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. You got to know when to hang them up. Like I love Roy Jones Jr., but it's time. You know what I mean? He's not fighting anywhere near where he fought. He's one of the greatest ever.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see guys like that get hurt or knocked out and not know when to hang them up. And in the case of Roy, he's got a steady gig. So it's not like he has to fight, and in Vegas, we spoke to him post Crawford, post all, and he said he still loves it. And I get that. It's hard. Boxing's one of these things that's very hard to stop doing. You just don't stop. But there are other things you can do within the boxing world rather than fight. He could fight exhibitions if he wanted to, if he really loves to fight, but like to fight competitively like that with these young lions, it's just not smart. Nobody wants to see these guys get hurt. They put blood, sweat, and tears in the ring. It's time for Margarito to hang it up. I don't want to ever see him in the ring again. I don't want to see Pacquiao in the ring. I don't want to see Mayweather in the ring. These guys have proven everything they need to prove.
What about Cotto, man? What's the word on Cotto?
Don't want to see Cotto in the ring, to be honest. I mean, he still could do it, but he's not getting fights for a reason.
Cotto, I'm hearing Yoshihiro Kamagai. You may remember him from fighting like Robert Guerrero at the StubHub a couple years ago. I think it was on the same card Lomachenko fought Gary Russell Jr.
Yeah, Kamagai fought Soto Caras out here twice.
Yeah, he fought
him at the
Soto
Palazzo Theater. And then he fought him on, I want to say, one of the undercards at the Forum. I want to either Triple G or the Hopkins undercard is when he fought Kamagai in the rematch. But yeah, Kamagai's a tough guy, man. I tell you what, Cotto can't overlook Kamagai. People that don't know who he is, this guy's a warrior, man. He's a come forward fighter, and he can hurt Cotto.
Yeah, he could. I mean, Cotto's been out of the ring since November since he fought Canelo. So, I don't know how that he's dealing with that. It seems like from seeing recent pictures of Cotto that he hasn't, blown up in weight. He wasn't really known for doing that, I don't believe, but at least not recently. So, I wouldn't mind seeing Cotto back in the ring, just a couple more fights, but,
a couple more fights?
We do the Kamagai and then some other fight in Puerto Rico or in Orlando or something like that. I wouldn't mind that, but I think that, him, Marquez, Pacquiao, I think that it's kind of time. We need the new era to start. But sometimes, like I say, man, a lot of these dudes, they don't go out by themselves. Some young dude's gonna have to beat them up. And one of my favorite writers has this quote, in boxing, when you retire, you don't get a Rolex, you get a beating. So maybe Cotto, Marquez, and Pacquiao, maybe they're waiting for somebody to give them that beating. I don't know.
Cotto's had a couple beatings.
Well, maybe he wants one more. I don't know. I mean, what's he doing sticking around, man?
I don't know, man.
One more. Yeah.
I don't understand it, because Cotto's a great fighter, always been a great fighter, and he has nothing to prove. None of these guys have anything to prove at that level. Just hang it up. Let the next generation come in.
So I just got a text right now, and just to give anybody listening the heads up, the preliminary fights from Samtown are on live Fox Sports 2 right now. So Ladarius Miller is in action right now as we speak, and he's going up against Jesus Gutierrez. Ladarius Miller 12-1 against Jesus Gutierrez 14-1, and
good fight.
Those are the undercards to the championship fight tonight. It's a WBA World Featherweight interim title between Carlos Zambrano 26-0 and Claudio Marrero 21-1. So looks like we got some good fights tonight on Fox Sports 2 and Fox Sports 1.
No doubt.
Everybody out there, go check those out.
And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. We didn't want to make this one too long. We appreciate everyone who tuned in. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. We appreciate you coming on and listening live. We will be back Monday talking some more boxing, some Canelo Chavez. We'll talk some other fights. We'll what's that?
Cuban boy. Your Cuban brethren.
Yeah, we'll talk Gamboa.
Robinson Castellano may put hands on his ass.
Not happening.
So tune in. Yo, I swear, ain't no Cuban fighter can get beat. They don't lose, man. They don't lose to this dude. They ain't never lost. Lara ain't never lost. Ortiz ain't never lost. Well, Gamboa ain't never lost. That Crawford fight don't count. So.
Nah, that fight counts.
Undefeated.
He lost, but you want to make jokes, but your boy from Cedras just got the brakes beat off him.
Hey.
He got the brakes beat off him by a guy who they said was not experienced enough.
Hey, man, he got set up. Everybody knows what that was.
He got
that
killed.
Set up.
He got beat 2 fights in a row.
I got a question for you Island boys. You Island boys out there. I got a question. So why is it that you guys the Puerto Ricans accept Miguel Cotto when he's from like New Hampshire, but you guys don't accept Danny Garcia from Philadelphia?
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up, because Cotto's father was in the military. So he was born in Rhode Island out of his father being in the military. Afterwards, Cotto and his family were raised in Puerto Rico. He speaks Spanish. He went to school here. He fought in the Olympic Games here. He signs fighters here. He stays on the island, and he can speak Spanish. Danny Garcia is from Philadelphia, probably has went to Puerto Rico one time in his life, it sounds like. And when you don't know the culture, and when you don't want to learn the culture, and you want to separate yourself, Danny Garcia doesn't rep Puerto Rico. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't visit there. He doesn't have more than one fight there. So, the difference between the two is monumental. I mean, asking about Danny Garcia being repped in Puerto Rico, I mean, who is he? I mean, he might as well be somebody not from there. I mean, it's more important, I think, that the Serrano sisters, you see that. I mean, they're from New York, represented, and they get articles written about them in Puerto Rico, but that's because they have a fan base there. They go to Puerto Rico. If you don't go to Puerto Rico and you don't put hands and you don't keep in touch with your people and you don't know your culture, Puerto Ricans will figure you out. And they'll know you, man. They'll know you, they'll know when you're a fraud and when you're not, and when you're over there just to make money. And that's what Danny Garcia was doing. So between the two is like, comparing the Atlantic Ocean to a puddle. I mean, there's no comparison between Cotto and Danny Garcia. I mean, yeah, Cotto was born in Rhode Island, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. And by the way, I mean, Cotto is not really the most loved fighter from Puerto Rico. I mean, if we're gonna break that down, I mean, Cotto, in comparison to Trinidad, you go the Atlantic Ocean compared to, you know, the planet Jupiter. Really, I mean, it's not even close. So it's about the relationship that you have with your people over there.
Well, that's some good intel, because honestly, I didn't know that. You know, I didn't know all that about Cotto, and I wasn't trying to clown. Honestly, I was just trying to figure it out because you see cherry picking, six-toe guy. They talk about Garcia, but he doesn't get the love like Cotto does, and I never really knew why.
But
nah, man.
Hector brought up a good point, though. Cotto really doesn't get the love there either. Most Puerto Rican fans don't really care for Cotto, but it's more because of his actions. Because he's not really a people person. Like, if you've met Cotto,
that's what it is.
He's not necessarily a mean guy or bad guy, but he doesn't really embrace the fans. And Trinidad did. Trinidad was like of the people. He didn't speak the best Spanish. He spoke a lot of slang. You know, he was more hood kind of, but
I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, in the biggest fight of their careers, you know, if you look at Cotto's last fight, he comes to the ring wearing headphones, kind of trying to ignore people. You know, when Trinidad fought Bernard Hopkins, he came to the ring. You know, the fire department had, you know, and he had all Puerto Rican stuff on. You know, and even when his fight with De La Hoya, he came to the ring with things talking about the island Vieques, which is next to Puerto Rico, being bombed, you know, by the American government. So it's, you know, the difference between the two and what they stood for is way different. And, you know, for Cotto, you know, you're more of an introverted person. You're following up a guy who was extremely extrovert and was someone who connected with the people on a level where, you know, he won. Like, most people thought he lost to De La Hoya, but he went back to Puerto Rico and they still threw a parade like he knocked them out. So that the difference is huge, man. Danny Garcia, I mean, hey, you know what? To me, you know, it's on him. You know, we can say that, you know, Puerto Ricans don't like him or whatever, but it's on him. You know, if you don't try and if you don't go over there and actually try to even people, you know, and you're not getting any love back, well, what did you expect? You know, it's his product. He labeled himself with not being a Puerto Rican fighter. He labeled himself kind of with the Adrian Broner, with the Havoc style, with kind of like the Chin Checkers, if you guys remember them, that Curtis Steven was a part of, and Jadon Cordrington, kind of that style, like this urban Philly style, more so than a Puerto Rican fighter. So, you know, that's how Puerto Ricans view him.
No doubt.
All right.
So we'll go ahead and hang it up with that one. I appreciate both of you coming on. That's Hector Franco, senior writer and editor at Frontproof Media, and also Anthony Saldana, senior writer and editor at Frontproof Media. I appreciate you guys coming on once again, and we appreciate everybody who tuned in today. We will be back Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific.